Gentlemen and lady, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for joining us. Aishat, can we start with you on the report? Let's get our background again. First off, there might have been things that didn't get into the report. I'm very concerned about the Karu instance because I lived in Karu for a while and I know what it is like when lands are allotted to people and to see how haphazard that can be. The effect on the environment. What are the possibilities of perhaps maybe flooding in a place like Karu or Lugbe or all the satellite towns in Abuja?
Thank you so much, Mazino, for having me on the program this morning. Just like I stated on the report, there are so many people who we actually tried to interview, try to get them on camera, but they refused speaking with us because they kept saying that this particular activity is being perpetrated by, allegedly, they are blaming the FCDA, that's the Federal Capital Development Authority, for, granting these permits or maybe granting them in error or also allowing for proliferation of buildings around waterways by, say, private builders or estate developers. And now, regarding the fears that you have stated, residents within Karu region, Orozo, Begi, Lugbe, they spoke to me, and then you could tell that they have their fears. They were saying that the rainy season is almost here. As a matter of fact, it is here already because it has started raining in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. It's just not as frequent as one would expect it to be. So we're still, going into a proper rainy season. And they are telling us that, especially people who live within Lugbe area, there is a particular estate that, the FCT official didn't mention, or there is an estate in Lugbe where there is always fears of flooding in that particular estate during rainy season because the houses in that estate is built or are built on, waterways, according to what the experts are telling us. But the residents would tell you, residents in the estate would tell you that even if that is the issue, the situation at the moment, how did the people who built these houses, the estate developers, how did they get the permit? This estate has been in existence for years, for decades. So how did they get the permit to build on those waterways? And then we have it is becoming a little bit political because you could tell FCDA talking about we're going to pull down structures. When you go to that particular estate, you would see there are signs for FCDA saying they're pulling down the structure because it is on the waterways. Even during the rainy season, you would see that entrance into the estate, it's difficult. You could have issues with loss of lives, loss of properties, and also the resultant effect on the environment. So what I'm saying here is that there are fears by residents in the FCT, especially those who live in the satellite communities like Karu, Rozo, Begi, Lugbe, amongst others, about the incoming rainy season. We're just getting into the rainy season. They are scared about losing their property because this goes on yearly. And then for FCDA, they keep saying we have provided places for you to relocate to. Why aren't you willing to relocate? And then from the people we spoke with, although they refused to see the camera, they did say that why would we relocate? The place you're moving us to is not as conducive or as convenient for us. We have children who school in this area. We have our businesses in this area. How come you want to move us to other places? And it's not looking like, they are accusing other estates within the same area that they are the ones, somehow blocking their own waterways and now channeling all of the waterways into this particular estate. So the log of the water, the much of the water that comes during the rainy season, that results to flooding, it's now more in the estate in Lugbe. So the situation is just something that I think that there are lots of factors put in place, and until we begin to address these issues, every year we keep having press conferences, press releases from the estate leadership, management of the estate, and also from FCDA. It's back and forth. I have been covering that estate for 3 years now, and it's a lot
I hope
of
you
issues.
can hear us. Aisha, I hope you can hear us. We're trying to stop you there so that we can get to another guest, but we'll be coming back with more questions.
Let's come to Lagos, because all of the things that Aisha said is very, very important for us to highlight, which also happens in Lagos. And it begs to ask the question whether it is oversight, complacency, or just downright incompetence.
Or greed.
Or greed, there we go. But Lagos is a potpourri of a number of issues, right? And we have with us here the PEMSEC engineer, Mahmood, to give us a bit of give us a bit of insight. Most importantly is the matter of flooding. Lagos is no stranger to flooding here in Lagos, which is the commercial hub of Nigeria. Can you tell us what measures your agency has put in place ahead of this warning by NiMet?
Thank you very much. I think I would take the question to come around and say, what is this? Is the city ready? When you say government, everybody assumes that it is always about government. We all heard what your correspondent in Abuja said. It's as if she is talking about Lagos, everything she was saying. So it means all around our cities, the situation is almost the same. So it begs the question that, are we as a people ready for floods, or we are willing to make sure that we are not flooded? Because the conversation is always around what is government doing, what are the things government has put in place. But I will ask the question, as a people, because it's more than the government. It takes more than one hand to clap. No matter what you put in place, if the people says that they want to be flooded, then how do you want to help someone who wants to drown? Except you forcibly take him away from that side. So I would rather say that, you know, it's a symbiotic relationship. It's something that duties and responsibilities. Fine, we have over 100 primary channels within Lagos, as recognized in our master plans, and we are ready to start maintaining all of them.
Ready to start or already started?
Started already. You know, again, you can't go around over 100 channels within a year. So it's something that is all year round. And we also have a team that is dedicated to just going to all these channels and doing them 24/7. But the issue is, what is our citizens doing? On Friday, we went around Lagos Island, despite the fact that you saw some trending videos about flooded areas and all that. We are actually working in those sites. But what about the solid waste disposal of the citizen? What about people, you know, again, our gutters, our drains are meant to just carry storm water. So you ask yourself, where are the water coming from when it is not raining? You still have everywhere flooded and yet it's not raining. So it shows that it is not only storm water that you find in those drains. People empty their kitchen waste, which are not treated, and they go to pollute your waterways. So it's something that, while we are talking about what the government is doing, we should also be asking our citizens. Again, what Aisha mentioned is issue about enforcement. I like that statement, but the point is, what is integrity? Must I always enforce before you do the right thing? Must I always? So it begs the question that, are we as a people? Because we can't be everywhere. We expect people to even alert us.
All right.
Why will you be silent when someone is blocking your waterways? Okay. And you are silent?
I have a curious question. Mr. Ogunlade, I'd like to say we're going to come to you, but I'd like to lay down the issues here first before we come to you as a climate change expert.
Right.
But to you, sir, regarding, let me give you two examples here. Let's take, for instance, Festac. And since we're looking at Lagos as against Ojuelegba, Festac was built with manholes and a very interesting system where your waste from your home, and I mean your human waste, is actually channeled through into these manholes. And they don't go into gutters. The gutters, like you say, are for just water. When it rains, they drain into the canal all around Festac. But in Ojuelegba, for instance, people's human waste from their toilets empty into the gutters. Is it that there is no provision in terms of town planning when it comes to these areas, or these, you know, anywhere built in Lagos after Festac or the rest, after 1980, let's put it that way? Because it would seem to be the case. And if that is the case, what solutions then? Because these infrastructure are already in place. You can't change them. You can't start building manholes now or drainage systems on the buildings currently. What's the solution?
Okay, it's a simple thing. There are areas where you have combined sewers. I mean, where you have both the stormwater and the soil, but it's expensive. That is not what we are practicing in Lagos. So Lagos has a separate, the sewer, we don't have sewer lines in most areas. So your home waste actually should go to your septic tank and the soakaway, while stormwater just goes into the drain. That is what is provided almost everywhere.
That's what is practiced.
Except where you have those estates where they have their
sewage systems.
System. However, what people are doing, which we are currently enforcing, is people puncture their sewer line, their septic tank to go into public. Some houses don't even have that. Don't even have septic tank. So it's a question of, as I said, as a people, are we
conscious?
Ready? Are we conscious? Do we have that integrity to make sure that I will not do anything, my activities will not disturb my neighbor? So those are the things that we need to start asking ourselves. As a government, I can assure you that what you have, the maximum that you have is just flash flood. And once you have that, just be rest assured that within hours, the flood, unless there's a deliberate blockage somewhere, which we will get to if we know where those things are. However, we need people to also act as good citizens.
As we talk about flash floods, it makes me wonder about canal expansion as well as our wetlands that we've been selling off. But let me come to Ogunlade for this question about wetlands, canal expansions, and water channels. Giving from a climate resilience standpoint, how dangerous is this trend of building on water channels, especially with the rainfall intensifying, the flash floods, and the rising sea levels?
Well, thank you very much for having me. And I must just say for a fact that it is not healthy, not in Nigeria, not in any part of the world. You know, by science, it shouldn't be. By practice, it should also be discouraged, not even for a developing climate like ours. But I'd like to, make a contribution to what the PAMSEC actually said. The business of government is to ensure social orientation. Unfortunately, that it is. It is to enforce compliance and to allow the people to do the needful. And I must also add by saying where government and the people seem to be on the same page is at the level of problem identification when it comes to advancing policies, to address flood. In Nigeria, maybe in Lagos State, for instance, like Aisha rightly mentioned, the problem is there right before government and the people. But when it comes to formulating policies or implementing policies, often it becomes the exclusive preserve of the government. And I think people should be aware, even though they are the beneficiaries of this policy, there are different factors, that are causing flooding or that are triggering flooding in our own part of the world. Unfortunately, we seem to narrow our conversation to just one or two of these three main factors, that are responsible for flooding. Meteorologically, it's going to happen. So there are meteorological factors that are triggering flooding. Either you like it or not, the glacier is melting, climate change is happening, and of course, there's a lot of water coming from the water. There's melting of the glacier, like I did mention. There's increased rise in the sea level. So this naturally will result to flooding. Then the physical factor, and this is where bulk of these duties lies on the mandate or the schedule of government. It appears we tend to urbanize as a people without considering the consequences of urbanization, which has to do with what are those things that should define our urbanization as a people? Are we actually enforcing our drainage policies and management practices in Lagos State? Do we have to wait? It has become like an annual issue where we have to wait for NiMet to release annual caution before we go into action. It's quite expensive for us to do, 100% turnaround for those water channels that exist in Lagos, for instance. But then, do we have to wait for when floods are here before we embark on what should be, the primary duties of state actors? And that begs the question of priority and, of course, social inclusion, like I did mention in the policy-making process. Now, there are human factors. So I want to say people are complacent, people are building on waterways, and, of course, they are not best practice, like I said, but it's still the duty of government to ensure compliance of standards and, of course, have people to be on the same page. Because after all, the primary responsibility of government is the welfare of its people. So we have so many cautionary measures that we should adopt. Lagos is not exceptional in this regard. The whole of Nigeria, 30 out of 36 is prone to, to flood. And we hear this almost every year. But then the question is, how harmonized are we in our interventions to solving this? Lagos is flying exceedingly well as far as development is concerned. But there are issues that we need to cater for. And this has to do with our channels. I mean, in Ogun, where I work, basically, it appears when rain don't start, people don't clear the drainage. And government don't even come to do the clear up. When they do this clear up, they have to wait and allow this water to find their way to the drains again before. I mean, it appears it has to do with prioritization of policy and, the amount of involvement that, people have in this policy making process. So it's beyond just saying, we have a policy, the people are not aware. It is having an harmonized intervention that has the collective interest, of both civil society, the media. How much of media leverage is the government even considering to orientate the people as regard?
All right, Mr. Ogunlade.
Unfortunately, there are so many issues in
the so much to cover.
Yeah, I know there's so much to talk about, but we're going to address it. We're going to address it, don't worry. But thank you very much for pointing out certain things. I want to come to the engineer here, Engineer Adegbite. Regarding what he said, first off, let's put this on the shelf that it is the sole preserve of the government to actually educate the people, to inform the people. Not coerce them, enforcement comes after education. But let's leave that on the side. Let's talk about development in Lagos State as it is. Now, does the office of the Lagos State Office of Drainage Service and Water Resources, do they have a system where people, after getting authorization to build their houses, actually come to your office to perhaps navigate how their development is going to affect drainage? Yeah. Because if that is there, then people might not know about it. If it is not there, then perhaps that's part of the problem. Also, is there inspections as well for ongoing? Because there's so many constructions ongoing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you need to remember when I started my conversation, I didn't want to start highlighting what we are doing, because again, it's usual rhetoric, what is government doing and all that. Now, back to your question. My ministry is not responsible for building plan approval. However, when you are building near the water body or wetlands, then you do need certification from us. And we inspect and make sure that it will not affect the drainage or the wetland. Again, just as I said, we have our master plans that is well publicized. And even what I even want to do extra is to make sure that I visit most of these gated estates to make sure that you explain what the issues are. You lay bare, just as you said, let us make the whole plan accessible to everyone. Everybody has it. There is no one, I dare say that there is no one in Lagos
I see a problem there, Engineer Adegbite. And the problem is that these gated estates that you want to visit already have a problem. The problem might already be because they've built perhaps maybe on waterways, or their drainage systems out of their homes go into not sewers but storm releases. So it's like putting the horse after the cart here. And that's why I proceeded by asking whether there are permissions given to these gated estates even before they're built from your ministry.
Now, I've assured you that before they build, we do check and we do certify. That is not what I was saying that I'll be visiting. Okay. It's just to make sure that we have all stakeholders on board, as well as letting them know what they are supposed to be doing. Again, just as your mentioned, that it is a collective. I want to go beyond we have this, we have that. I want to make sure that everyone is in sync as to what we need to be doing. I've just explained that we have our master plans, we are following those master plans, we're expanding our channels, both secondary channels and primary channels. However, this tertiary channel is strictly, that is the ones that you see on the roads, is responsibility of local government and the resident. So that is what, and everybody knows that, by the way. So it's not a question of do they know, it's a question of how well do you want to now make sure that people are well aware. Awareness is something. So what we are doing, again, if you've been monitoring what we have been doing, is to make sure that we go from localities, communities, to explain all these issues. Again, Lagos State is not waiting until the predictions are done by NiMet. We are constantly in touch with each other. We are working with all the national agencies. We even have our own weather stations to be able to predict what is going to happen. So we know when rains are coming. For today, for example, we have issued a statement as to what the level of rains will be. We know that we won't have rains much today. It might be later in the afternoon. So on a daily basis, we do issue flood alert. We do measure what will come. But again, how well prepared are our people? Just like someone mentioned while they were making their presentation, that there are some localities that are well below the sea level in Lagos. For example, the Ajegunles, those around the Lagos Lagoon, around the Korodu area. You know, advisory messages have been sent to them. We have even visited them that between so period and so period, you will be flooded. So please get to a higher place. Again, you can't.
I know that even as far back as the 90s and the 80s, there were flooding in some of those areas, which sometimes were happening in 3 years, and that's because of the water, the rainfall would vary over those years. But times have changed, and climate change is here. It's not man-made now. It is man-made, but it's the bigger force that we're fighting. And so, as much as we're talking about the human factors here, are we prepared for the force of nature? Nature? Is that
nature,
for nature?
Okay, let me give you an example of what we are doing in Lagos Island.
Yes.
For you to know that we're actually prepared for that. We have studied the effect of the climate change, and we are regularly monitoring the tidal level within the lagoon. So our infrastructure that we are building now, the roads, by the way, we are presently expanding all channels within Lagos Island to ensure that we take care of what is to come. And then we have raised the level of the road. So it means that as the tidal level is being monitored, we know at what level. Presently, we know that we need to raise certain things, we need to expand the channels. So in terms of resilience, we have monitored all those things. But again, it takes time for you to start moving from. So we are making sure that at least, let's take it block by block to ensure that we cover the entire state. So we are very certain that by the time we finish all these things, flooding will be very minimized. You cannot say you will eliminate flooding,
but it will be minimized.
But it will be drastically minimized.
Let me turn to Aishat. Aishat, we apologize.
I fear we may have forgotten you there. We did not.
Aishat, we didn't forget. We also didn't forget that the report actually emanated from Abuja. So I want to bring some of the concerns that have been discussed here right now with Engineer Adegbite over to Abuja. Now we can see what Lagos State is doing. From your report or your research, did you discuss with any of the authorities regarding what might be done? And do the residents who have built these houses or developed these estates over waterways, do they have any fears? Because if we know Abuja very well and the FCT minister, is demolitions underway. So what are their fears, and what are the authorities doing, like Engineer Adegbite here has told us about Lagos? Did you find out?
Okay, Mazino. So just like Lagos State, the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, has its own master plan. So, I mean, there is a master plan for every developer to follow. So you're expected to build along certain areas, leave green areas out of it, leave waterways out of it and all of that. But then when you have some of these estate developers or private individuals who do not approach the FCDA to get, the proper document, the proper approval for building these structures, that is where the issues start. And then we have residents who may not be aware that the houses they are buying or they have moved into through rent is prone to flooding. And then you now see houses during the rainy season, you see their walls are wet, and then, there's moist on the wall, the molds coming out and all of that, apart from the water that even comes into the building. Yeah, these are the fears. I mean, it's very paramount, it's very particular in satellite communities where houses, homes are built in these areas, right? In these waterlogged area. Apart from, the demolition, just like I stated earlier, the FCDA would tell you that for people who have gone on to do these things, they are considered illegal. I mean, an investigation panel will be set up, and then they would go on to look at, did you actually get a proper building approval from the FCDA? And if you claim you got from the FCDA, which FCDA official did you get this from? Is it the original approval? But then again, you have residents who will tell you that it's the same, allegedly, it's the same FCDA officials who are granting permits, or they're granting these permits in error to those estate developers and to those private individuals, to get their building structures erected on this waterways and waterlogged areas, because maybe they must have paid them something, or there has been some settlement that has been done. So now, the FCDA, that is the real FCDA, now the officials who are enforcing, where they notice illegal structures and flooding happening in those areas, consistent flooding, year in, year out, every time rainy season comes, they just go there and then they say, you know what, we're giving you, say, notice, say maybe 2 months, 3 months. This is even prior to the rainy season. You have to relocate, you have to move your structure, you have to move your things, your property into another place, because if you don't do that, they mark buildings and then they say we're coming to demolish, and they do that. They have been doing that, and then you see people begging, pleading, and saying, where do we have to go? We don't have any other place to go, and all that. So they would rather, for some people, they would rather just manage and mitigate the challenges posed by flooding. They don't mind having to move their property out rainy season, and they're just scooping water out of their homes.
Right.
And once the dry season
Aisha, when you put those X signs, because I was doing the signature for the X signs, I know those signs, those bold signs, they're pretty much everywhere. But hey, we're pressed for time, and it's very clear that there's a bigger issue here at play when we talk about our wetlands, and that is the housing deficits that the major cities in Nigeria face. And that's a conversation for another time. And I trust you to pick this up to do a report on that. For the capital, Abuja. But Aisha, many thanks for joining us. Aishat Salihu is a News Central correspondent who brought us this report all the way from the FCT Abuja, capital of Nigeria. Also, Olamide Ogunlade, Senior Climate Change Program Manager at Corporate Accountability and Public Participation Africa, CAPPA. He also joined us to give us a bit of insight on the climate change aspect of this. And finally, here in the studio with us was Engineer Mahmood Adegbite. He is a Permanent Secretary at the Lagos State Office of Drainage Services and Water Resources, giving us a bit of insight on how prepared Lagos is ahead of the rainy season. Gentlemen and lady, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you for all of your insight and perspective. It's been a very informative discussion. Indeed. But here's where we draw the curtains.